I'm Shannon Jackson, your host of a Healthy Push podcast. I struggled with anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia for 15 years. Everything used to be hard for me. Even just driving 5 minutes from my house used to feel impossible. But now I absolutely live for travel and adventure, and I experience lots of peace and joy. I've not only reclaimed my life, but I've helped hundreds of others to do the same. Here, we stop managing anxiety and instead we create a healthy relationship with it. One where you say goodbye to the anxious thoughts, symptoms, panic attacks, and fears, and you actually live your life. Forget complicated strategies, quick fixes, or the same old hacks you've heard 100 times before. Each week, I'll bring you simple, actionable advice and honest conversations that lead to real, long-term healing. You aren't just an anxious person, my friend. There are reasons why you're struggling with anxiety, and these are things you can fix and heal from. And this is where that journey begins. Welcome. You're right where you're meant to be. All right, let's talk about spiraling. And this is something I am definitely all too familiar with. Back when I was struggling with panic disorder and agoraphobia, I caught myself in these moments so often, especially when I was experiencing a high amount of anxiety and a lot of panic attacks. Like there were times where I would experience panic attacks daily, and it was so easy to get caught up in the spiral of it. So if you've ever found yourself spiraling due to high anxiety, you're absolutely not alone. I wanted to create this episode to help you feel less overwhelmed and more supported and way less alone in these moments. And I want to help you to navigate these moments when anxiety feels really big without making yourself feel worse. So, I want to start here and state something that might not be so obvious. Spiraling doesn't always look like full blown anxiety, right? Like full blown panic attack. Spiraling can also be quiet and slow and really subtle. So, I want to kind of go over first a few ways that spiraling can show up because you might not recognize it as spiraling and you might convince yourself like this is something big, worse, like all of those things. So, the first way it can show up is mentally, right? The overthinking, the looping thoughts, the constant what ifs. It can also be catastrophizing, like imagining the worst case scenarios, right? Going along with them, believing that they're going to happen. It can also look like Googling symptoms or obsessively checking in with how you're feeling and seeking reassurance. So, spiraling can look like a lot of mental stuff. It can also be emotional, right? Like feeling overwhelmed, hopeless, feeling on edge. It can also look like having shame or guilt about how anxious you're feeling. It can also look like having emotional outburst or just shutting down. I mean, I remember definitely this was a big one for me and how I could kind of recognize that I was spiraling because I would have really intense outbursts. It can also show up physically, right? And this is a big one for many people. You have the heightened anxiety symptoms like the racing heart, the dizziness, the depersonalization, the nausea, shaking, chest tightness, whatever it may be. It can also show up in having trouble eating or sleeping or just being able to relax. It can also show up feeling just physically restless or like frozen, like you just don't even have capacity to do anything. It can also show up behaviorally, right? And this is a big one for a lot of people too, where you're isolating a lot more. You're canceling plans, you're avoiding doing things. It's also behaviorally shows up in the sense of that you're trying to fix everything at once and you're jumping between things. You're like, no, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you're just trying to feel better really quickly. And it can also show up in trying to get that reassurance, right? Or over relying on others for support. It can also show up in a really subtle way that a lot of people don't recognize as spiraling is existentially and spiritually, like feeling that overwhelming feeling of who even am I? Or will I ever feel normal again? Or what is even the point in any of this? Feeling that sense of being lost or disconnected or like nothing really makes sense or maybe even matters. So, all of these are ways that spiraling can show up. And so it's important to recognize this because I always say you have to have that awareness before you can work to fix it. So if you've ever thought, why am I like this? Am I doing something wrong? You're not. This is just what anxiety can look like when it gets loud. So, the first thing that I want to talk about that's really helpful when you're in this state of spiraling is reframing the spiral. And if you know me, you know that I love reframing. It's one of the most helpful things in anxiety recovery, in my opinion. So, let's start with this reframe. Spiraling isn't bad. And this is so incredibly important to recognize. It's human and it's a natural stress response. So when you find yourself spiraling, right, we can kind of go into that, what I call oh shit mode. And we're like, oh no, this isn't good, right? And you convince yourself you're going backwards, things are getting worse, on and on and on. But that's not the case. You're just having a hard moment. And it's really just a sign that you might be overwhelmed and that we need to take a look at how much stress and overwhelm is going on. It's not that you're broken and you're not doing anything wrong by spiraling. I think that this is one of the biggest ways that we get stuck in anxiety recovery is we see these really hard moments as us doing something wrong or not enough or going backwards and all of that, but that's just not the case. And in fact, not trying to stop the spiral can be one of the most helpful things that you can do. Because truly, truly, the goal isn't to avoid spiraling, but it's to meet yourself kindly and compassionately when it happens. So, the title of this episode, right, is How to Not Spiral When You're Experiencing Lots of Anxiety. And I really want you to think and shift this because it's okay to spiral. We don't want to tell yourself, right, you can't spiral. This is bad. Oh my gosh, we have to allow you to spiral. Like, it's okay to spiral and it makes sense. And the only thing that's going to make things harder when you're spiraling, honestly, is trying not to spiral. So let's shift now and talk a little bit what often fuels the spiral because when you can understand how you're sort of adding fuel to the fire, you can make things a lot easier, right? And less hard on yourself. So, a big way that we fuel the anxious spiral is with the stories that we tell ourselves, right? I kind of talked about this a little bit already, but it's those stories of, I'm going backwards, I'm failing, I'm never going to get better. These stories are so unhelpful, right? And we really have to slow things down and catch ourselves when we're creating these stories and when we're allowing ourselves to go along with them. This is a huge thing that I teach and everything that I teach because it's such an important area that you need to pay attention to. So, really paying attention, right, to those stories that are going on. And what are those stories that you're telling yourself? And are they so realistic? Could we maybe do some reframing there? And the next way that we often fuel the spiral, right, is by trying not to feel anxiety, which often just leads us to feeling more. And so, really working on dropping that resistance goes such a long, long way. Another way that we fuel the spiral is we're looking for those quick fixes. We're putting pressure on ourselves, right? We need to find the fix. We need to find the solution. We need to feel better. And so now we're going to do all the things. We're going to meditate. We're going to exercise. We're going to do the red light therapy. We're going to do the rebounding. We're going to do the tapping. We're going to do the grounding practices. We're going to optimize everything. That sounds so stressful. Just saying that out loud sounds so stressful. Looking for all the fixes is going to add pressure, is going to add more overwhelm, is going to add to that spiral. So, these are three big ways that we fuel the spiral: the stories, right? Trying not to feel anxious and looking for those quick fixes. Let's shift now and talk about what is actually helpful. So, the first thing that I want to talk about, because it's right at the top of my mind, stemming from what I just shared, is doing less, not more. When you're spiraling, one of the most unhelpful things is to go into overdrive. I kind of give this analogy. I am so bad with these, but I feel like these help me and maybe they help you, even if you're like, okay, Shannon, where are you going with this? But when we're struggling, I picture like being in a car, right? And all of a sudden we're really feeling a lot of anxiety. We're struggling, we're experiencing a lot of panic. And we sort of just hit the gas. We're like, we need to power through this. We need to get through this. We can't be here in this hard moment. We can't be spiraling. And so you hit the gas pedal and it just adds more chaos, right? More force, more pressure, more stress, more overwhelm. And we do this because to pull back, to take our foot off the gas a little and maybe slow down is scary because we tell ourselves that story of, I can't ease up. I have to do, right? I have to get myself out of this. But taking your foot off of that gas pedal and just allowing yourself to slow down a bit and doing less is actually so incredibly helpful. And I know it's scary taking your foot off that gas pedal and maybe even putting your foot on the brake a little bit. But truly, going into that overdrive is only going to add much more stress and overwhelm. So, letting go of that need to fix how you feel, right? Like just letting yourself feel without the fixing and just looking at the tiny supportive steps that you can take that are going to help you when you're in these moments of spiraling, like just allowing yourself to take a slow walk, to drink some more water, to eat some more nourishing foods, to rest. Like these supportive actions are going to be incredibly helpful and not continue to add to the spiral. The next thing that's really helpful is shifting from the why to what can I do now? We get caught up in this analyzing, right? Like, why is this happening? Why am I spiraling? Why am I feeling this way? And we try to intellectualize our way out of it. We think and we analyze. I used to do this all the time. This is one of the biggest reasons why I struggled for so long. But we want to be in our heads because that's sort of a default and can feel easier than allowing ourselves to feel and actually look at what can I do to support myself. But it's so helpful in these moments to shift when you find yourself in that place of why, and instead asking yourself, what can I do right now that's going to be helpful and supportive to me? And oftentimes we know what those things are that are helpful and supportive, and just allowing yourself to slow down, check in, and give yourself what you need in that moment. Okay, the next thing that's helpful when you're spiraling is to be mindful of your self talk. I teach this, I talk about this a lot, and there's a really good reason for it because the way that we talk to ourselves really freaking matters. So many of my students that I work with are like, dang, Shannon, I never realized how harsh I am on myself. I never realized how mean I am to myself. I am so judgy. I am just honestly an asshole. And this was me too. Like, this is okay, but we need to be aware of it. We need to pay attention to how you're talking to yourself and we need to shift, right? We can't be so judgy, harsh, critical, and mean. We have to instead do some of that reframing, right? And shift that self talk, saying things like, this is hard and this is shitty, and I'm doing my best. And that's going to be incredibly helpful, right? Instead of beating yourself up and treating yourself like an absolute jerk. So, that self talk, another really helpful way that you can not continue to spiral. Another way is to just validate. Like, we lose sight of validation so much, but it's such a helpful tool in life in general, but of course, in the anxiety recovery world, validating your experience, like saying, I feel anxious, and that's okay. Like allowing yourself to feel anxious. It's okay that I'm feeling this way. Don't love it, right? But it's okay that I'm feeling it. Like we skip this step sort of altogether always when we're feeling anxious, especially when we're caught in these spiral loops and we're not slowing down to actually recognize what we're feeling and to validate what we're feeling. We just sort of go into that overdrive, right? I'm going to fix it. I can't feel this way. This isn't okay. So reminding yourself, right? I'm feeling anxious. That's okay. And I felt this way many, many times, right? And I've always gotten myself through it. And I'm going to get through this. The next way that we can help ourselves when we're in the spiral is to ask for support. Truly, truly just calling a friend, texting someone, hopping into a community, simply saying out loud, like, I need some support right now. Like, I need a little bit of support today. I know that this was such a hard thing for me, continues to be something that I have to work on very intentionally daily, but is something I've definitely recognized recently going through everything that I've been through is just reaching out and saying, "Hey, I need to talk," or not even saying it that way, but just reaching out and connecting. Like connecting with people is a way that we get support. And it's not necessarily saying, here's what I'm going through, here's what's wrong, I need a fix. It's none of that. It's just allowing yourself to connect and to feel heard and to feel validated and to just feel held. And that is so incredibly powerful. And this is something that I see in my private community all the time is people hopping into the space and just saying, "Hey, I'm having a really tough day. I just need some support." And how quick everyone in my community is to say, "We've got you. We're here for you. You're going to get through this. What can we do? What's going on?" And it's just such a beautiful thing. Like we need support when we're struggling. The last thing that we can do that's really helpful is to treat yourself like someone you love and care for, right? Instead of being that jerk, that asshole, that person that's like, I can't believe you're struggling again. I can't believe you're in this place again. It's instead saying, okay, how would I approach my best friend, my partner, my mom, if they were going through this? And how can I give myself that love and support? What would I say to them? What can I say to myself? What would I do for them? What can I do for myself? Really treating yourself like you would someone you love goes such a long way. And we overlook this so often, but it's such a powerful way we can stop ourselves from spiraling and just going to a really not fun, dark place. Okay, so those are some things that can be helpful when you find yourself spiraling in whatever way that looks like for you. But I want to shift now and talk about how it is helpful at times to sort of zoom out and look at why it might be happening. I don't want you to go into that over analyzing, like, why am I feeling this way? Why are these feelings popping up? It's not so much that, but it's zooming out and looking at why might this be happening in like a bigger picture. Maybe you're going through some transitions. Maybe you're going through a big transition. Maybe you're like me, your a relationship's ending, you're starting a new relationship, you're graduating, you're having a baby. Big life transitions are really big causes of spiraling and having really tough moments. Also, just experiencing more stress, like life stressors definitely can add to the overwhelming feelings and the spirals. Also, sleep changes, hormones, like all of these things play a part. And I want to mention this and talk about this because we always go to it's something bad, right? I'm getting worse. I'm going backwards. And it's like, no, 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 wait. Can we look at this in a more human lens and just zoom out a little and look at, okay, yeah, there are other factors. Maybe it makes a whole lot of sense why I'm spiraling and experiencing a lot of anxiety right now. And it's okay to not know why. If you're like, no, I'm not really going through any transitions, there's not a whole lot of stress. I feel like I'm sleeping pretty good. My hormones are sort of in check. I'm really doing a good job of taking care of myself. Like, I don't know why. That's okay. Allowing yourself to feel and have tough moments is just a part of the human experience. But it can be helpful to acknowledge when life is just a lot, because life is a lot. But sometimes, I also want to mention this, spirals happen simply because you're trying so hard not to spiral. And we know this, you've probably seen this. Anxiety often spikes when we're resisting or judging what we're feeling. And so this can be a big reason why you're spiraling. Maybe it's not all that other stuff that I mentioned, right? And maybe it's simply because you're trying so hard not to spiral. And remember, spiraling is okay. So, I want to give you some gentle reminders here. Spiraling does not erase your progress. Spiraling is part of the process. It's part of how you make progress. It's a part of how you heal. It is okay to spiral. Also, you can feel anxious and still be healing, right? That's kind of how it works. It's kind of how the journey works. Also, you don't need to be calm to be okay. You can be spiraling. You can be kind of a mess. You can be feeling really anxious and still be okay. We don't need to force calm into the mix. Also, you got to let these moments be a cue to better care for yourself and not criticize yourself. Really, truly hold space for yourself and meet yourself where you're at and give yourself some love, support, and care. Also, the last thing I want to say here is this moment doesn't define your journey, right? Spiraling doesn't define how your recovery is going, how it's going to go, when it's going to happen. You gotta not let it define a thing. Like, spiraling is often just a part of the journey, and allowing yourself to be accepting of that is a huge part of what will honestly prevent it from happening. But when it does happen, it'll help you to get through it a lot more easily and with a lot less tension and overwhelm and anxiety. So, I wanna give you a gentle nudge here because if you're somebody who's like, Shannon, all that stuff that you went over in the beginning, like the mental ways you can spiral, the emotional ways, the physical ways, the behavioral ways, the existential, like that's all me. Like I'm spiraling a lot. I don't know how to respond to the high feelings of anxiety. I don't know how to respond to the panic attacks. Like feels like no matter what I do, I'm just continuing to spiral, continuing to feel a lot. And it's really hard. I want to encourage you to check out my masterclass on overcoming the symptoms and panic attacks. In that class, I give you what exactly you can do to respond in a healthier way to all of it so that you're feeling a lot less and so that you're not going to that place where you're spiraling. And in it, I really teach you why you're stuck in a cycle of the symptoms and panic and why it's not your fault. And I teach you how to respond to the symptoms when they hit without spiraling and without needing to escape. And I teach you why coping techniques like breathing exercises and the grounding practices and all that stuff are actually keeping you stuck. And I teach you how to stop overthinking and intellectualizing every symptom, sensation, and panic. And I teach you the role of avoidance and how to gently face your fears. And honestly, I just really teach you simple steps to build trust in yourself. Because right now, if you're experiencing a lot of symptoms, anxiety, panic, you have such a lack of trust in yourself. So this is a big thing that I cover and teach you is simple steps to build trust in yourself and stop living in that constant state of fear. So I will put that link to the class in the show notes. And I really want to encourage you, check that out if you're really struggling because there's no fluff in that class. Like I teach you exactly what's going to be helpful for you. So please, please remember spiraling is okay. It's part of the process. You're not going backwards. You're just having a hard moment. And I really just want you to meet yourself with lots of care, compassion, support, and do the things that are actually going to be helpful for you and not go into that overdrive. All right, until next time, keep taking healthy action. I hope you loved this episode of A Healthy Push. If you have, I'd be so grateful if you could leave me a rating and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. This helps people to find the show and get the support they need. And if you know someone who could use a little push, be sure to share this episode with them. And for even more support, head over to ahealthypush.com for show notes and loads of tips, tools, and inspiration to help you on your recovery journey. I'll see you next week.